hope everyone is staying happy and healthy. Today I'm going to be working on 4 journaling cards, and I'm going to back each of these journaling cards with this coffee dyed paper that I put together. And what I ended up doing was pulling out some encyclopedia pages, and I used coffee dye or coffee, and I also pulled out 2 of my spray inks. One is like a shimmery kind of goldish brown color, and then another one is a pinkish red color that matched the flowers on the cards. And I just did that, just the 2 pages. I didn't do a mass batch or anything like that, just to get kind of what I wanted for this layout. And then what I ended up doing was backing all of the 4 cards on that paper that I coffee dyed. Once I do that, I'm going to flip them all over, and I am going to embellish each one of these. I'm basically going to do 2 kind of the same and then another 2 kind of the same. So I'm going to have 2 each that are similar to each other, and I'm going to be backing them further with this coffee dyed paper. I wanted to keep the journaling cards pretty simple so that you had some place to journal, but it didn't have a lot of embellishments or anything like that on these particular cards. So I'm just playing around, seeing what I like best. I don't want to cover up too much of the writing on these, so I'm just determining kind of how I want my paper, where I want it to go, and which ones I want to cover more than the others. So you can just see I'm kind of twisting and turning it to get the placement of these the way I like. And I also wanted to make sure that I didn't cover up some of the staining that I did on the encyclopedia page that I really liked. So you can see I just measured-ish with and then marked it with a pencil, and then I put that one there on the far right, and then I'm going to trim this one a little bit smaller, but I'm just going to have this one piece at the very top. And I'm going to do something very similar with the other 2 cards here in just a second, just using my little trimmer. I'm going to trim it out pretty much the same, using the same measurements, and then putting another smaller piece on the other card. And this is a good way to use up your scraps too. I was able to use pretty much this whole chunk of paper and not have any little bits and pieces for the most part, except for some of these that I'm just trimming down. That one is going to go on the bottom of that card there. And I really like how that looks. I like being able to see some of that dictionary page on some of them, and then the other ones where it just kind of peeks out around the edges a little bit less. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to stitch around each one of these, 2 with a straight stitch and then 2 with a zigzag. And I did that before I glued them down because I didn't want that stitching to go through on the front of the cards, but I wanted the texture of the stitching. And you can see there that I'm just using some black thread. I'm going to glue each of these 4 squares down. I'm going to use a little bit of my glue stick and then some of my fabric tack around where the stitching is, just to make sure everything kind of stays down and adheres. Normally I'll just use my glue stick for thinner paper like this, but with the stitching I wanted to make sure I had a nice seal around the edges of the paper that I'm adding here. So now everything's glued down. Just kind of smushing everything down, making sure it lays flat. And then next I am going to think about stitching around 2 of these cards. Now I stitched around 2 of these cards and I used black thread, but because the cards are black and they have a white core, you can definitely see where that stitching was. So I pulled out my distress ink and black soot, and I'm just kind of rubbing my little blending tool all over where it's stitched, and you can barely tell now that it had that white mark on it. And I'm really glad I thought of that because I didn't like how that looked at all, and I thought I had ruined it at first, but I was able to kind of fix them up. Now I'm just contemplating what I want to do with these. Like I'd mentioned, I kind of wanted to keep them pretty simple. Didn't want to do too much to them. So what I'm going to do first is just ink around all the edges. And then I'm going to pull out some of my fabric and some of my vintage trims that I have, trying to figure out what I like. And I'm going to pull out one that has some pretty deep scallops that I really like. I'm not sure when I got that. I've had it for just a little bit, but I think it's like a pillowcase trim, maybe. So I'm going to cut off 2 for this card, and then I'm going to cut 2 more for another card. And I have to say, I've been collecting a lot of vintage things lately, like this vintage trim, vintage papers, and things like that. I do have a hard time kind of cutting into them, cutting into the papers, pulling pages out of books, cutting into this lace. But I bought it for that reason, and I'm using it. You could use it on a pillow, you could use it on journaling cards. I guess, just getting it through my kind of mind that it's okay to use these things. The whole point is to be used. Just because I'm not using them traditionally doesn't mean that people aren't getting joy from them or you're not enjoying using them. So I've been trying to kind of get out of that mindset of, oh, this lace is for vintage pillowcases or pillowcases. I can't use it on my journaling pages because, just because I'm doing on journaling pages doesn't mean it's not appropriate. So this is just some, what is it, muslin that is coffee dyed, and I just zigzag stitched it and kind of made it ruffly kind of looking. And I just trimmed that one piece down. It was just a little too long. And I'm just going to use fabric tack and glue all of this down. The fabric tack or the 3-in-1 glue works the best for this because it is made for fabric and it just dries really nicely and it really holds it very well. So I do recommend using that glue, and I've mentioned it before. So in this one I wanted to kind of hang it off the bottom, and then that left one I wanted to hang it off the side. And I'm just kind of gluing everything down. And I think in a little bit I'll end up using my credit card or my key card just to make sure everything's stuck down real well. This glue, the one thing bad about it is kind of sticky and stringy. So sometimes it gets all over your fingers and it's kind of hard to manage. So using like a card like this kind of helps act as your fingers but doesn't get all over your fingers, and then it's hard to work on the rest of the project because your fingers are all sticky. So I do recommend using some kind of like little card or bone folder or something like that. So that's those two cards and those two cards. I'm going to pull over. I had a little bit of scrap left over from the little ruffle that I cut off. So I'm going to use it over here. And I actually had all these little strings that came off when I ripped the fabric. I'm like, well, I might as well use that too, not throw it away. So I just make a little nest and I'm going to glue that all down. And I think I put a button over here on this. I'm trying to remember if that is what I did or not, but I think I ended up putting a button over here because I thought the card needed just a little bit more. And then the other card that says your soul is a garden, let it grow wild, that one's just going to stay really simple. Oh, sorry, I had to kind of go in and out. Actually, no, I'm not going to add a button, I don't think. Maybe? I don't remember now. So I'm just showing you these all close up. While I'm doing that, I just want to thank you guys for joining me. I hope you enjoyed the video. It was a pretty quick one today. If you have any questions, leave them below. If you want to give me a thumbs up because you enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate that. And I will be back very soon, hopefully with a couple more pieces of ephemera that I'm going to show. I had a couple videos ready to go, and I will hopefully voice those over and get them posted on YouTube soon. Have a great day, guys. Stay well, stay happy, and I will talk to you again very soon. Bye.